So I went to a Bible college, and I don't know if you can figure this out. Bible college doesn't have a extensive emphasis on science. That's not to say that Bible college was opposed to science. That's not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is that in Bible college, we took science classes because they were required for accreditation. For the school to be accredited and for your credit to be able to transfer to another accredited school, you were required to take a science class and a math class and an English class. And I was given the option of taking 3 different science classes. They had 3 different options. They had chemistry, which from what I understand involves a lot of math and marbles that you put together with sticks and then you covalent bond things. And I wasn't interested in as much learning about science as I was getting the credit for the class. They also offered biology, which I don't know if you know this, biology is the stickiest of sciences. It has to do with living things, and living things are sticky, and living things are wet. It's the grossest of sciences, really, honestly. So I didn't want that one. So I took physical science, not physics, physical science. I think this is the same class that they teach in elementary school, physical science. And my goal, I took a lot of other classes that semester. A lot of the classes that I took that semester were pretty heavy-duty reading classes. And so my goal for physical science, don't judge me, okay? My goal for physical science was for me to pass the class without opening the textbook. I did. I went back and looked at my transcript. I got an A in that class. The thing that was really confusing to me is there was lots of kids in the class taking the same class I was that kept asking if I wanted to be a part of their study session. And I couldn't understand what they were studying. Because like I said, I didn't open the textbook. I went to class. I didn't ditch class. That wasn't my MO. I went to all of the classes. I didn't take notes, and I didn't study for tests. Now, I don't recommend that as a tactic for people who aren't good test takers. I just have this ability, and I realize it's a weird ability. I have an ability to assimilate knowledge and put it in categories in my brain. And so for most of this stuff, it was like stuff I had learned a long time ago. The laws of thermodynamics. I learned about those things. And so when we talked about those things, when we talked about motion and inertia and mass, I remembered those things. So I didn't need to go back and study them because I had already experienced that. How does physical science have anything to do with Advent? This week in particular, I started out the week with a level of frustration. just about the way things work in the world. Like, that there's not always a correlation between what you put into something and what you get out of it. Have you ever noticed that? You put a lot of emotional energy into it, and sometimes when you get that back, it's not the same investment. And I was struggling with it. Let's just be honest. I was struggling on Monday of this week. It was Monday. I don't know. I've said this in the past. Pray for your pastors on Mondays, because sometimes Mondays are hard for you, but they're also hard for us, because sometimes you're weighing all of the things and you're trying to figure it out, and you're reflecting on, like, Monday is kind of like Tuesday in some ways, but it's also like the day after really a big event kind of day. Anyways, I was on the struggle bus on Monday, and I was struggling with that. I talked to a friend that morning who was asking me to pray for their church in Orange County, California. And their church found out about 6 months ago that the building that they've been in for 3 years since COVID. They got into this building. They were given this opportunity to move into this building, and it was a huge blessing. They're a church plant. They were planted around 10 years ago, and this is like the first time that they actually had a place that wasn't a Starbucks where they could have a staff meeting. And so, like, they were excited, and they put a lot of money into this building. And they didn't buy the building, but it was from another denomination, and that other denomination, the church that was there closed. And so the denomination let them stay there for a very, very reasonable rent, which, this is California we're talking about, right? Anyways, 6 months ago, they find out that the denomination that they have been renting from has decided that they want to start a new church in the city of Orange. And to do that, they're going to take this building back. And so, like, that was 6 months ago. Devastating news then. Scrambling to try to find a place to meet. No places are available. They put together this... Brenton, my friend, he's one of those people who has crazy ideas. And sometimes he's one of those people who has crazy ideas and, like, God follows through with his crazy ideas. And so, like, this was, like, exciting. Like, this opportunity was exciting. And so he was asking me to pray about this opportunity, and the opportunity was that the city of Orange had an old firehouse that was sitting empty. It's right off the square in Orange. It's sitting empty. The city is still maintaining the building. Eventually, they plan on tearing it down. And he just had this, like, he just scheduled an appointment with the mayor of the city and asked them if he could use it. And the mayor was, like, absolutely floored at this idea. And the mayor goes down the hall. Apparently, at City Hall in cities, there's a closet with keys to every building that the city owns. I didn't know that. Did you know that? He walks down the hall, gets the key for this old firehouse building, and goes over to the firehouse building with Brenton. And is, like, looking at all of this possibility, all of this opportunity, all of these ways that God could use this space. And the mayor is more excited about it than Brenton is. It's pretty amazing. He goes back, schedules a meeting with the city manager. The city manager is on board. He gets the opportunity to speak before the city council proposing this idea. The city council is on board. And then Tuesday afternoon, after waiting for the final answer, he finally gets it. And the final answer is, the building needs too much repair. We can't afford or can't see putting money into a building that we plan on tearing down. So it's not going to work out. Their final Sunday in the building that they've been meeting in is next Sunday. So Monday was kind of like but I was like, I put my hope energy into Brenton's basket, praying that God would answer prayers for him. And then Tuesday comes, and that we receive that news. It's devastating. And in the middle of all of this, I'm wrestling with the scriptures for this week. You ever read something and it feels like it's about somebody else? It's like good news for somebody else. Like you read the lottery, you read that somebody won the lottery. You read that somebody struck gold in their backyard or whatever. Like you hear these things that are good news for other people, and like you want to be the mature person. You want to be the spiritual good person that rejoices when other people are blessed, right? But then in the middle of it, you're kind of not. I opened up the passage, and it's one of those things you can actually go here. I opened up the passage. No, stay on that slide. Isaiah 61. It's this classic passage where it talks about, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it in a second, but it's a passage that talks about the year of Jubilee coming finally. It talks about the fortunes of Israel being restored. It's like a reversal. Like everything's been bad for so long, everything's been hard for so long, and then all of a sudden, we have this passage. Isaiah prophesies this prophecy out into the air in the middle of exile, and he's like, this is coming. The good news, the euangelion, the gospel is coming. We go to Thessalonians, Paul's talking about how grateful he is for the church in Thessalonica, that God has done amazing things in them and through them. We go to John. John the Baptist is wandering around in the wilderness, like he's willingly chosen to make his life about proclaiming the gospel. And I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And then you go to Psalms, Psalm 126. It's the entire psalm, but it's like this big. It's real short. And the entire psalm is about the return of the fortunes of Israel. And then this last passage, it's grouped with the psalm because it's actually a poem. It's actually the thing that Mary says after she finds out that she's going to have Jesus. It's known as the Magnificat. And this prayer that that Mary prays, this worship song that she writes in this moment, is about the reversal of fortunes. It's about the the fortunes of the poor being, the poor are lifted up, and those who are high are taken down. And I sat with that in the middle of all of those feelings. And I wrestled with my theology. You know, as you do. It's a great thing to do on Tuesdays. Wrestled with it. This might be a rabbit hole. I realize that my expectation is that God would meet the needs that I have in miraculous ways. And that miraculous way would be for provision to show up from nowhere. I don't know if you know that. It's been a long time since God created something out of nothing. I'm not saying God can't do it, but it feels kind of like God set things in motion. And with the laws and the physics of the universe, like I don't know if you remember the laws of the... Are you familiar with the law of the conservation of energy? Familiar with that? I'll read the little synopsis of it. The law of conservation of energy states that an energy can neither be created nor destroyed, although it may be transformed from one form to another. If you take all forms of energy into account, the total energy of an isolated system always remains constant. Then there's also the law of the conservation of mass, which states that in a chemical reaction, mass is neither created nor destroyed. So let's just think about that for a second. All of the mass that was created at the beginning, still in existence. Some of it has changed forms. Some of it has changed states. All of the particles, all of the atoms, all of the things. So when every single miracle that Jesus performs throughout his ministry happens in that kind of a system. We at this time of year and in various seasons of the year, we look to this idea that God reverses the fortunes of Zion. Like that God is going to come back. I mean, that's part of what Advent season is about. It's about us leaning into the longing for the return of Christ, the longing of the restoration of all things. It's about us leaning into what God is about to do. And that thing that God is about to do is to turn everything around. Right? That's what we hope for. That's what we're hoping for. That Jesus will return and make all of the things, all of the wrong things right. And yet, I realize that what my theology is that God is going to provide for me in ways that are outside of the laws of physics. That's my hope. My hope is that God is going to provide for me from outside of the laws of physics. And maybe there's a theological expression. It's a Latin phrase, ex nihilo or ex nihilo, which from nothing. That's the belief of the church, is that God created the universe from nothing. if we're to imagine a world where Isaiah 61 and Psalm 126 and Mary's Magnificat are a reality that doesn't come with a cost, is to imagine a completely different sort of universe. All energy cannot be destroyed. All mass cannot be destroyed. So where does it come from? If God were to reverse the fortunes of Zion ex nihilo, or ex nihilo, exile would surely come again. Think about that for a second. If God were to just say, pick Israel up out of Babylon and return them to where they belong, like what's going to happen eventually? Eventually, things go back to the way they were, because the thing that hasn't changed, you've broken the laws of physics, but what hasn't changed is the hearts and minds of men. Which I'm not sure which is a bigger miracle, to change the laws of physics or to change the heart of men. We're going to look briefly, we're going to read through the passage in Isaiah, because when Jesus entered the temple and prayed, and he's like, hey, give me the reading for the day, which is, this is the reading for the day. He reads this passage, and at the end of the passage, he says, in your hearing, this is fulfilled. He says, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. See, in Israel's law, there was this idea that they called it the year of Jubilee. And in the year of Jubilee, what would happen is that all debts would be wiped out. All of ancestral land would be returned to the families that it came from. Slaves would be set free. The thing that struck me while I was reading this passage and reflecting on the things that are going on in the world and the things that are going on in our lives and in the lives of the local church, is that the year of Jubilee was supposed to be a year of joy for everyone. Here's the thing that we don't understand. The year of Jubilee wasn't free. Debts were owed to someone. And they were wiped out. That required the participation in the hearts of man to celebrate the things that God celebrates, to celebrate the ideas that God celebrates. And in some ways, much of the reason why Israel was in the predicament where they were in exile to begin with is because they weren't celebrating the things that God celebrates. They had went years and years and generations without celebrating the year of Jubilee. And so, go on to that next slide. Proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for all those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and the garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair. They will be like oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord, for the display of his splendor. The return of the fortunes of Zion was not free. And I think about the theme of this third Sunday in Advent. The theme of the third Sunday in Advent is joy. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know if it's just you get to come along for the ride, but every single one of the weeks, like the theme and the passages have been like there's been this tension. In my heart. There's been a cost in my heart. And I'm thinking about joy, the year of Jubilee. This thing that Isaiah describes, the things that the writers of the law describe, where debts would be wiped free, slaves would be released, captives returned. This was to be a year of joy. Ironically, there's this idea within the whole context of Christmas. And it's the idea that it's better to give than to receive. If you ever put a lot of energy into a gift and you're really excited about that, the possibility of giving that gift, you know that there's truth to that. You know that there's truth in the idea of giving a gift and it being a blessing and it serving the needs and meeting the needs of the people or that you're giving to. And this whole Advent season comes down to this baby in a manger, right? This human baby. And we often think of the miracles that Jesus would go on to do. Water into wine, raising the dead, healing the sick, giving sight to the blind. We often think of those things as the miracles. The real miracle is that Jesus was fully human, had all of the same temptations, all of the same proclivities, all of the same problems, all of the same struggle, and somehow was able to convert that human nature into a nature that finds joy in the serving of one another. that finds joy in the self-giving act, that finds joy in the sacrifice, that finds joy in the paying of the debt of the other. It's really interesting. I think the Apostle Paul sums it up probably the best in his passage in Philippians chapter 2. He's talking about relationships, right? Your relationship with one another, your conflict with people in the church, the things that are going on. He says this, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but to the interests of others. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father." It's interesting how I wonder if we were to live in the moment of the events of Jesus' life, if we would have been there at the birth, if we would have been there throughout Jesus' childhood, if we would have been there throughout his career, his ministry. It's easy for us to be hard on the people who were walking with Jesus, not getting who he was. But it was only in the light of the death and resurrection of Jesus that any of the other things made sense. It was only in the gift. The life he gave was the gift. And he didn't give it reluctantly. He gave it with joy. For you, for me, for all of us, for the restoration of all creation. He gave that gift with joy because he loves us, because he loves his creation. The gift of this season is in the gift. The joy of the Advent season is in the gift. The meeting of my need comes from from someone else giving a gift. The meeting of the needs of the people in our community come from the gift that we give. The joy comes when we no longer hold so tightly to our things and our stuff and our agenda and our place and our position and our power. The joy comes when we recognize that we're a part of the solution that God is creating for the world. That we're a part of we participate in Advent. That the year of Jubilee happens in us and through us and for us. And it's joy. That it is a gift. The entire list of things, you go back and read those passages from the beginning. You can put those up on the screen. Maybe take a picture of them. All of this happens as a result of our willingness to participate in the thing that Jesus does in his birth. We don't recognize the significance of a humble birth until we recognize that it's a part of the grand gift that God is giving. What would it look like if we were to recognize that the thing that God is doing in his kingdom is restoring the fortunes? And rather than having this bent theology that imagines that that's going to take place by creating something out of nothing, recognize that we're a part of that. We're a part of the way that problem is solved. We're a part that just exactly the way the year of Jubilee was. The year of Jubilee was everybody comes together and everybody participates in this moment. And it's joy. I'd like to invite our worship team to come back up. I've never had an answered prayer that didn't come from a person. I mean, it came from God. But every single time it's come from the hand of another believer or accounting error. Like, the solution is here. The solution for Longmont, the solution for the United States, the solution for the world is here. Yes, there will be miraculous things. I think the most miraculous thing that God could do is to turn the hearts of men. So in this season, let's ask the question, what is the gift that we have to give? And as we give it, let it be joy. First candle was hope. It's burning a lot brighter this week. The second candle is peace. It's amazing how each of these things is interconnected. Peace in knowing that things are taken care of already. The needs are already met. God is already on the move. God is already acting on your behalf. God is already answering your prayers. What could give you more peace than that? And that leads to joy. And that joy comes from letting go. Letting go of control. Letting go of possession. Letting go of ownership. And the perfect example of that is Jesus. The perfect example of that is Jesus, who had every right, every privilege, every title, every authority, and chose to not use it for his advantage.